All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, as we always do, we just want to thank you all for the support over the years. Thank you so much for supporting the Search for Huru platform. It really means a lot. Also, make sure you guys go to dynastymirror.com. Again, go to dynastymirror.com. While you guys are there, make sure you buy some merchandise. Also, join the email list, join our email list so you guys can stay up to date in regards to what's going on with Dynasty Mirror, the brand. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the content. Again, like, share, and subscribe to the content. We would really appreciate your guys' support. And then become a monthly Patreon. Again, become a monthly Patreon. Patreon.com, search for Guru. Once again, we would really appreciate your guys' support. Without further ado, all the way from Ghana, we have the legend on with us today, the master teacher. That's what I call him, the master teacher, Obadele Kambon, you guys. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Kambon, for joining us. And today's topic is, where did Black America go wrong? Because we're going so far down this rabbit hole here in America. Many think that by voting for Joe Biden, that's going to put an end to white supremacy. Many think that the Democratic Party, Republican Party has their best interests at heart. Many have put all their eggs in one basket, and that basket is called America. Many think that everything is going to be okay at the end of the day. So, I think that Dr. Kambon is definitely more than able to analyze what's really going on with Black America. Where did we go wrong? And how do we reach our potential? Dr. Kambon, go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay, so I'm Okunini Obadele Kambon. Okunini is P. They translate that into English as doctor. Just as far as just a little bit about myself, I have been a repatriate for 12 years. I received my Ghanaian citizenship in 2016. My entire family received theirs. Both of my parents, my wife, my sister received their Ghanaian citizenship in 2019. Four of my children are Ghanaian citizens. A little bit, in terms of background as well. I completed my PhD here. That's 2012. And I received the Vice Chancellor's Award for the Best PhD Thesis in the Humanities that year. A couple of years after that, I received the Provost Publications Award for Best Publication in the Humanities. Again, that's at University of Ghana. And then more recently, I received the Nana Marcus Mosaic Garvey Foundation Award for Excellence in Education and African Studies. Anything else about me, people can check out my own personal website, ObadeleKambon.com. It's my first name, last name.com. OBADELEKAMBON.com. And then we always have our the only African-owned social education network, and that's Abibitumi, ABIBITUMI, abibitumi.com. So people can also check me out there. I see, you got Patreon, you got all these other places. We gotta get people linked into Abibitumi, Brother Dynas, because that's the only one that's by us and for us.
Right.
Go into the topic here, if that's cool.
Oh, go ahead. Take your time, brother. The floor is yours.
Okay. So as far as the topic, early on, if you look at 1787, you had Nana Absalom Jones in what was called the Free African Society. Those who have, studied anything. So my undergrad degree, I went to Morehouse College, and my degree was in so-called African American Studies. And, what we came to understand is that early on, we were very clear in terms of who we are, that we refer to ourselves as Africans and not any type of, American. By and large, when you see collective, references to ourselves. So we would have something called the African Lodge, the African Methodist Episcopal. And it was very clear, that we were not Americans, because if we were Americans, for example, most recently, we wouldn't have a knee stuck into our necks and just be killed out in broad daylight, right? That doesn't happen. But then beyond that, if we even look at the term, it's like, what are we, or who are we naming ourselves after? So even the term American is coming from Amerigo Vespucci, right? So, here you have someone, from the mid 1400s to early 1500s who, was known for so-called applying this idea of the New World, right? And then you have Martin Waltz Miller, who decided to refer to this so-called New World after the name of a white person. Now, if we are calling now, a lot of people don't have a problem with that because they have white people names anyway. But somebody like me, I was born and raised with an African name, so to name Marcus Vespucius, right, the Latin term, is really problematic. Now, our ancestors, so not just that, but if you look at the very first people, Africans who were stolen and taken to what is now known as, United States of America, you'll find that this is not 1619, but it's actually going back to a little bit before 1526. Now, 1526 is a landmark year because that's the year of the rebellion, the revolution in San Miguel de Guadalupe, right? So here you have Africans who were stolen and taken to what's now what would be considered modern day South Carolina. But those Africans were very clear that guess what, we are not Americans, right? And they actually fought the Spanish tooth and nail, and they drove the Spanish up out of that land, right? So it's very important for us to understand these, and this is essentially what we are dealing with is, the falsification of reality and then the manipulation of imagery, right? And the falsification of reality is referring to ourselves based on the name that, is one, a white man's name, and then two.
Oh, we lost the brother. Hopefully he hops back on here shortly. Guys, sorry about the technical difficulties. Let's get Brother Kambon back on. And I will have him cut his video off so it doesn't drain all the bandwidth. But guys, make sure you hit the like button. And so the history he's already sharing with us, I had no clue about. So I guess in South Carolina, the Africans and Native Americans teamed up to drive the Spanish out. Is that what he was referring to? I didn't know that. So, I'm learning something new as we speak. So let's see here. Let's get the brother back on. We lost him. Please click that link, Dr. Kambon. We can't wait to have you back on. We need you to get back on, Dr. Kambon. Guys, how do you feel about the recent police involved shooting in Wisconsin? Have you guys seen the video? What are your thoughts on that? I'm going to remain silent on it because my opinion would be very unpopular. So I'm just going to leave it alone. That's all. I will leave it alone. So yeah, but the video's pretty graphic. Yeah, so it's Abatubi. I'll put the link in the chat room, guys. Click on that link so you guys could sign up for that social media. So for Dr. Kambon's social media website. So I'm gonna stay out of it. So yeah, you guys. Hopefully, let me see if you send me an email. So yeah, you guys, that's about it. All right, Dr. Kambon, let's get you back on, brother. Hold on, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me see if he's emailing me out. Emailing me at all. So, Brandon, for some reason, we can't get Dr. Kambon back on. I'm gonna send you the link, Brandon. If for some reason we can't get Dr. Kambon back on, Hold on 1 second, you guys. Hey, Brandon, check your email. Check your email, Brandon. Brandon, check your email. Yeah, I'm gonna send Dr. Kambon an email right now as well. Let's see here. All right, Brandon, go ahead.
Hey, yeah. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Real good, real good. I was waiting to hear Dr. Kambon talk. What was the topic again?
So the topic is where did Black America go wrong, and how can we reach our potential?
Oh, that's an easy one. If you listen to Dr. Amos Wilson, he said that now Black people are no longer ruled by the power of coercion, which is where we do what is demanded of us based on threat of physical violence. Now we're ruled by the power of influence, and that's where we went wrong. See, as long as they had to beat us and hurt us to make us do what they wanted, we always kept this identity of our own. There was a distinct difference. Well, we're the Africans, and those are the people who hurt us, so they're the enemy. But once we let the power of influence take over, where your former slave master makes you believe that you need the things that he produces in order to be happy, right? That's where we went wrong. We bought into the idea of assimilation, the idea of, as if we are able to acquire the things that the white man produces, that is the key to happiness. So when you got people out there saying, "Oh, I would move to or go to Africa, but after I finish my college degree, or after I buy me a house and a car, or that passive income property." See, these are things that the white man has told us we need to be happy. So what we want to do is first secure what the white man told us we need before we actually start living our life or trying to reach our full potential. That's where we went wrong. That's been the enemy. And if it's your real enemy, you don't want nothing they have to offer. Instead, you build your own.
Hey, what are your thoughts on and I kind of don't want to give my opinion on what happened in Wisconsin with the police shooting.
Because you probably like me where you feel like maybe, I don't know if you feel like this, but there was a lot of things that the police, we know who they are. We know what they want to do. There's a lot of things that I feel that brother did wrong, right? When he, according to the way he reacted. I don't care if he's right or wrong. I don't care if he's justified or unjustified. There's a certain amount of tactical and situational awareness that every Black man in America must possess. When you begin to go against that, trying to go based off of morality with the enemy who's like a beast, you're asking to get deleted. You know what I'm saying?
Right, Brandon. Because the thing is, like, I have a son, and you have a kid, and so I'm teaching my son how to properly engage with the police. But when we have examples like this, and then people start rioting and defending him. I mean, it's just, I mean, and again, I'm not defending the police, but when I've had encounters with police is yes, sir, no, sir, here's my ID. Anything else, sir? Hands on steering wheel, and I'm gone. But it's just, in a lot of these cases, people are resisting, they're fighting, they're not listening, guns are drawn, they're telling you to, get down, they don't want to, and then something happens and then people get upset.
So the thing is, Dinus, when it comes to the police, every single time that police officer puts that badge on, he's ready to take it to the furthest point, right? He's out here with the mindset that he's ready to kill or be killed when he hits that street. Unless you walk around every day with the mindset of it's either kill or be killed, then you just need to go ahead and comply with what the police ask you to do. It ain't no point of resisting, arguing. That is not a courtroom. That police is not a judge. He's not going to be able to exonerate you or convict you. He's simply the slave catcher taking you back to the plantation, right? Now, if you are a person, if you're a person, like I have a friend, he says, I got a no handcuff policy. I said, what does that mean? He say, I ain't let you put me in handcuffs. He did 15 years in the penitentiary. He said, he walks around with a gun on him everywhere he goes. He said, I'm willing to take it to that point with whoever, whenever. Now, this brother right here understands that if you truly want to fight back, you're going to have to really fight back and be ready to kill or something. But these people were just casually going to the supermarket or coming to break up a fight, and they're not ready to take it to that point. They need to just go ahead and comply. Like, if you're going to have that warrior energy, you need to use it when you're able to properly, do battle. Don't be trying to have no, because we have an attitude of defiance, like a kid rebelling against their parent. A kid has no real power over the parent, but they just try to do it just to agitate the parent, just to defy the parent. That's what these black men are doing. They're just trying to defy the police, and they lose every time. And then we're the ones who are expected to go react, put ourselves, our families in jeopardy, our livelihoods in jeopardy, because some fool doesn't want to use his brain and think with situational awareness. Now, a little thing happening with a guy in Wisconsin is impacting black people across the nation. Mm-hmm. Can't operate like that.
Now, he had his 3 kids. Now, people are saying, well, he had his 3 kids in the car. And I'm just like, well, he should have, he should have just sat down and complied.
Dinus, that means he should have listened and complied even quicker. Because now you're not just protecting you protecting your kids as well. See, these black men ain't thinking. You can't when you're in the hood, right, and you're a gangbanger, a gang member, it's kind of like an unspoken rule that if you see a man with his family, his kids, his baby mom, his wife, you gonna let him slide. You gonna catch that brother at another time. Black men want to go to war like, oh, I got my kids with me. Are you trying to use your kids as some type of shield, thinking that the police won't do what they do because your kids are involved? You know what I'm saying? Your kids are here. They want to murder you in front of your kids, because if they murder you in front of them, they got 3 black people who will be so terrified that they will never defy the police or the white authority again. So that brother wasn't thinking. I got pulled over with my nephews in the car. You know what I said to the police? Nothing. Oh, do you know why I pulled you over? I just didn't even respond. What you need? License, registration? Here. Here's a ticket. Thank you. Bye. See, we want to sit up and we want to try to seek a victory. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the people who talking about certain stuff with getting scammed, right? The court of public opinion don't make no laws. Every black person can side with you, but we don't make no laws in America. So what do you gain by trying to prove an empty point to us? It doesn't matter what we think. We're the people who going to send you off to get killed and then forget about you 3 days later. You know what I'm saying? So why are you trying to please us or impress us or prove a point to us? We all know what's going on. We don't need any martyrs to show us what's going on. We need people who are ready to do work to build us something better so we can get the hell out of here.
So, okay, so you already broke down as far as where did Black America go wrong. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Then we'll jump into how can we reach our potential?
No.
Which
You know what, Dinah? I'm not here to waste people's time. That I said what I said. If you need to know, go get you a copy of Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson. Read. Reading is important, but work is more important. Everybody in this audience knows what's going on and knows what needs to be done. Now it's on us to do it. If you lack the motivation, go find the motivation. Watch Dinus, watch me. We are brothers who are on a motivational path right now, just trying to get some positivity and encouragement. Come every day and drink at the well, man. If that's what it takes for you to do what you got to do. But other than that, brother, that's all I have to say.
Okay, what about as far as reaching our potential? Or did you just answer that?
You broke up a little bit. Repeat that.
I was saying, what about as far as reaching our potential? How do we reach our potential?
Oh man, let me tell you, reaching potential for our people is going to be a tough one, right? But it's like with anything, Dinah, you got to do a little bit every day. It starts off by learning and understanding that you can reach your potential. Potential is something that is manifested by the making. So what we got to do to reach our full potential is we have to set small goals, daily goals for ourselves. And as we reach those goals every day, it gives us the confidence to set larger goals, more long-term goals that we can reach, which then, leads to a change in our life. See, success is not just setting some humongous goal and man who said success is just doing a bunch of small things really well. That's what success is. So you got to do the small things. You got to change your mindset and your thinking. That's the first step. Believe you deserve it, and then go out and operate based on the belief that you deserve something better than what you got. You don't deserve to get slaughtered by the police. You don't deserve to have to explain to your young children how they need to interact with the white man and the police and stuff like that. You don't deserve to be in America living like a fifth-class citizen behind a dog and a chinchilla. You deserve better than that. But until you believe it, you won't be able to achieve it. You got to believe and achieve. But you got to have that mindset that's ready to do whatever it takes. You got to be willing to die to give yourself what you deserve, right? Not be willing to die to go get laid out in the street because you don't want to listen to what the police saying when you know they got the upper hand and there's really nothing you could do in that moment. See, stop trying to make an example and prove a point. The best revenge is massive success. You want revenge against the police, the white man, go out here and gain some massive success. And they're going to be looking crazy as hell, like, damn, we thought we could hold them back. But look at them now.
Hold on, guys. I'm not demonizing the victim at all, but this needs to be a learning lesson. I mean, as far as how to conduct yourself in front of police. And I'm not saying that there have been examples of people who have properly conducted themselves and something still went south. But I mean, we have to look at this as adults and not be emotional about it. And I think a lot of times we get over emotional and we don't want to deal with the facts at hand. I mean, Brandon?
Dinus, let me shut that down real quick.
Go ahead.
You know who John McCain is, right? The old cracker who was the senator of Arizona, right?
Correct.
John McCain was what you call a POW. He was taken as a prisoner during war, right?
Right.
When you fight a war and you lose a battle and the enemy has defeated you, right? In that battle, not the war, just that one particular battle. Does your commanding entity say, look, we want y'all to fight to the last man tell you surrender. That you surrender, you put your hands up, and then the enemy captures you and they hold you prisoner, but they honor the rules of war that are set by, NATO and whatever, where they don't torture you or mistreat you, right? That's called living to fight another day. That's called situational awareness, right? It ain't no honor in getting slayed in the street like a dog. That man's laid up on intensive care when he could have been at home right now with his children, teaching them based on his experience and their experience. Now he's laid up in a hospital bed. Ain't none of these people that's talking to you, Dinah, they're not going to pay his medical bills. They're not going to pay his rent. They're not going to do like white folks and start a GoFundMe for him. All they're going to do is get on the internet, Twitter fingers,
he's already raised like $375,000 through GoFundMe.
But I bet you nobody in here put money in. Now, he probably did. But the point is, okay, he raised money. But the point is, this guy has a long road ahead of him to recovering if he don't die.
Brandon, he's paralyzed from the waist down.
Exactly. So now we lose a soldier. We lose a soldier because instead of being like, all right, man, I'm going to go ahead and put my hands up, whatever, I want to jump in the car with my kids. Bro, now what good is he to us? An example for us to get mad and emotional over again?
Hold on 1 second. Hey, Pink Diva 88, go to Cynthia G's page with that. I'm definitely not. We're not gender warring here. Go to Cynthia G's page. All right, go ahead. Oh, Dr. Kambon's back. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, cool.
Dr. Kambon? Okay. We got you back.
Okay, Don, so I don't know when I dropped out, but I was giving you an entire dissertation.
Say that again, Brandon. Brandon, we'll go ahead and we'll pick this up later, Brandon. Hello, Brandon.
No problem. Thank you guys all for watching.
Okay, cool. All right, Dr.
So, Don, what's the last thing you heard? On and on, and I said, hold up, I don't see the little record thing. What's the last thing you heard?
I think the last thing we were talking about is I know you talked about the as far as the rebellion or the resistance against the Spanish with the Africans in South Carolina. Then you went on after that. I'm trying to remember. I was trying to come back to me. It's starting to come back. It's trying to come back.
That was basically the beginning of it. I went into sharecropping, debt peonage. I went into combat leasing. Did you get any of that?
No, you did. The sharecropping, no.
Okay. All right. So you missed everything, basically.
Yeah. Because I emailed you. Yeah, you had got knocked off like very, very.
Okay. So just in sum, that if you look at the United States, it's based on enslavement, it's based on genocide. So when you see this, what you'll understand is that, they are intent, and by this I mean those who are rightfully named after a white man, Amerigo Vespucci, that they're intent on not giving up their stolen gains, the stolen land of the indigenous people, and then also the free labor of Black people. And this was very clear in the 13th Amendment, where it said that slavery shall not exist within these United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, except where the party has been convicted of a crime. Now, this is basically, and you see this in the documentary 13th as well. I wrote an article on that about a year or two before that documentary came out. But basically, this is where you see Black people are, just continually subjected to enslavement, right? Continually subjected to genocide. And this is according to the 1948 Convention on Genocide, which has 5 different parts, right? The first part of genocide is dealing with killing members of the group. The second part is causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. The third part is bringing about conditions to destroy the group in whole or in part. The fourth part is preventing births within the group. And then the fifth part is transferring the children of the group to another group. So for Black people in the United States, we definitely qualify for all of those. But the last point that I made on this is that you have the difference between artificial selection and natural selection. Artificial selection is, and there's a documentary called Cosmos by Ben for Neil deGrasse Tyson where he goes into this. But with artificial selection, it's basically survival of the friendliest. And the example he gives of that is dogs who are bred. So all dogs originally come from wolves. But with this, you have, some wolves that were not as afraid of the fire and so forth, and were willing to be close to human beings. And in that, began this type of relationship where the human beings are able to shape, right, what dogs are going to be able to pass their genes along. And this is essentially the analogous situation for anyone who calls himself an American, is that it's survival of the friendliest, whereas the white person who decides, one, are you going to be lynched or not? Or it's the white one who decides, are you going to get a job? Are you going to get this grant? Are you going to get, whatever else? Meanwhile, someone who is looking out for common ancestry and common descent, that's a very natural type of African, a very natural type of person. That would be someone like Nana Nat Turner, right? So who is definitely not American, right? He was trying to destroy and take this over in Virginia. That's Nana Gabriel Prosser, right? Again in Virginia.
We lost you, Dr. Kambon. We lost you again. We lost you again. We lost you again. All right. Oh man, guys, I'm sorry about that. So next time he comes back, here we go.
Something like the connection is not stable. But I think, we can pause on that and maybe go to the next thing. But indeed, that if you have anyone who calls himself an American, this is the human equivalent of a sheepdog who has been bred usually for that purpose.
Repeat that again. Repeat that. People need to hear that again.
Go ahead, Dennis, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I hear you. I was going to say, if you could repeat that again, because I think people need to hear what you just said as far as calling yourself American. People need to hear that again.
Very good. So basically, that's the analogy that, this idea, even from the very terminology of a quote unquote Black American, that's the equivalent of, someone who has been bred to look out for their masters, right? Instead of looking out for common ancestry and common descent, and to actually fight for their masters. So if you see a sheepdog, what the sheepdog does is it fights against wolves, right, in order to protect its master's property. And this is the exact same thing that has literally been bred. So it's not even so much their fault that they are looking out for their masters, because they were intentionally bred to do so. So if you look at somebody like a Clarence Thomas or Henry Louis Gates, these are people who are actually intentionally bred in order not to be for African equals Black people, and rather to be for, whatever their white masters tell them to do. And, I think that this is really, in terms of terminology, what we're dealing with, on that front. So if you think that you are an American, of course, that's what you think. I went also into the Mohawk conferences, 1890, 1891. And what that was about was hammering out a consensus on Negro education to make sure that America would never be Black run like Haiti, right? And with that, they decided, okay, this miseducational system is going to be set up to just ensure that. And then that's the exact same miseducational system that was transferred to the continent by the British. And that's spoken about by Nana Jacob Carruthers in his. So, but Josh, you got that. Looks like our connection isn't very stable this afternoon. Can you hear me well?
I was gonna say, maybe if you turn off your video, it might be a little bit better. If you turn off your video. There we go. All right, go ahead. Let's see how this works.
All right, Dennis, can you hear me?
I hear you. I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So that's my point. I think maybe we can continue the conversation, because I've gone for quite some time, but I guess the people have only gotten the salient points that I was making. So just in terms of where we went wrong, one is through self-definition. or allowing other people to define us, as Americans. Another point is in terms of literally being bred to be anti-African, which equals anti-Black, right? If you are aiding and abetting a criminal in the form of the, criminal organization called the United States, then in large part, this is because you are intentionally bred in order to do that through this artificial selection process. They're the ones who decide who gets the job, who gets the grant, and so forth and so on. So that's really the crux of what
I hit that like button as well. I apologize. Not so much. Shower everybody. Brandon, I might have to put that on, brother. That's okay. I might have to put that on. Not brother, behind not on. That is going to be as far as how to get the whole start. So we'll go ahead and the audio is a little weird. Guys, how do I sound? Sound is shot. Okay. And that just happened recently as far as my sound. Guys, how's my sound? Okay, hold on. Shoot. Let me do this, you guys. Sorry about that. Hold on. Hold on. Let me get this back up, Mike. Hold on, y'all. Okay, there we go. Guys, is that better? Can you hear me? Dr. Gabon?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Cool. Perfect. All right, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So just basically the core point that I'm making is that when we understand ourselves as any type of American, Black or otherwise, then what we're really doing is that we're buying into this idea that we are nothing but the sheepdogs to be bred as seen fit by the human beings, right?
Okay. Now, as far as reaching our potential, right? Okay, here we go. What should the so-called African American here in America, what should they be doing?
Very good. So there are several things. One thing is that you'll realize there was a brother who actually repatriated, and I think you may know of him when he was here, a brother Kobe Smith, right? I think this is the arch enemy. So when he was here, he said something. He said, "Wow, being in Ghana is what it must feel like to be a white man in America," right? And in that, he was saying that he felt like this was the first time in his life that he was able to really realize his potential, that he was able to walk around and not be followed in the stores and so forth and so on. I think he's changed his tune since then. But this is really what we're talking about. And I was talking to a brother yesterday, a brother named Andre, who's looking to repatriate. And the best analogy I could give him
Okay, the brother froze up on us. Battered Kambon, yeah, froze up on us. Guys, how's my audio? You said it's weirder. Okay,
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we lost you at the Andre part. You were talking about Andre.
Okay, yeah, very good. So the analogy that I gave is that when I was in Addis Ababa, right, I was there for a conference, and it's well over a mile over sea level, and so it's very high and very hilly, very mountainous terrain. And I was there with a brother who had repatriated from Chicago, and we're walking, right? So it's already high up, but then you're walking and you got to go up hill after hill after hill. And, it's a bit difficult going until you get used to it. And, I was up there, I did capoeira, everything else. Now, when I came back to Accra, which is, basically right at sea level, I almost felt like I got flooded with oxygen, right? And it helped me to understand why Ethiopian runners are able to smoke everybody else in long distance running, because they're training in a place and that's all they do. They got all these parks where they're running, so forth and so on. Is that once you come to sea level, it's like you're getting massive amounts more oxygen than you're getting when you're at Addis Ababa. And I said that's what you feel like when you are in a place where people are not sticking their knee in your neck and killing you, right, or shooting you because you got a toy gun like Tamir Rice, or
Right.
Emmett Tilling you, and so forth and so on. Is that you're able to just live. And, like I said, I've gotten award after award, best PhD thesis, so forth and so on. And, you really feel like you're finally able to maximize your potential in a place where, whites are not able to decide on a whim that, okay, we're going to lock you up on a trumped up felony charge, which is what, I faced even in Chicago. But it looks like you have another question or any follow up to that.
No. So as far as us reaching our potential, no, continue.
Right.
In regards to
Yeah. So as far as maximizing our potential, as long as we are there in the United States, all of our potential is basically being siphoned into, an endless white hole, right? So if you look at Hidden Figures or whatever, it's like you'll have some of the most brilliant people on the face of the planet, but what they're doing is they're aiding and abetting a criminal organization, right? And when I say this is that the United States goes all around the world, stealing the lands of Black people, bombing Black people, killing, raping, committing genocide against Black people. There's a documentary called Stealing a Nation, right? And what that goes into is the Chagos Islands and how the UKKK in the United States colluded in order to steal that island to make it into United States military base, right? And right, this is exactly what we're talking about now. If you look at this, think about who financed that, right? Look at the Black people. I know people who are, consider associates or whatever, who are working for Lockheed Martin, right? This is arms, manufacturing firm, right? If you look at Black people, what we're doing is that we're financing our enemies that is essentially killing Black people internally to the United States, but then also killing Black people globally, worldwide. If you look at the role of Halliburton in Eastern Congo, where over 10 million of our racial relatives have been exterminated off of the face of the planet, that the deforestation, the coltan, all of that is, aided and abetted by Black people who are working for, these Neanderthals. And, it's like, even if you strive for whatever, we go into all of the Black inventions, but all of that is going into building up the white nation, right? And the white nation, as a thank you, will build a prison in order to house you. The white nation, what it will do is that it will buy the bullets, right? So even if you consider yourself protesting against that white nation, what they're going to do is they're going to say, thank you for having that protest, because the sneakers that you wore to march, we got paid off of that. And we're going to take all of that sneaker money in order to build the prison and buy the bullets that are going to shoot you down the street. It's going to buy the police car that's going to run you over. Thank you very much. Oh, the placards and signboards that you got from Office Depot and Home Depot for the 2x4 to hold it. Guess what? We're going to take all of that money in order to, shoot you down in the streets, in order to put you into the projects. So, part of it goes into our role in actually financing that enemy. And you had mentioned, or I brought this up, the brother Kobe Smith. We actually went to undergrad together, Morehouse College, and I mentioned that Morehouse College is designed to create Morehouse Negroes. If you look at the Mohawk Conference on this earlier, the Mohawk Conference of 1890 and 1891, that was a place where these white men came together. Samuel Armstrong, you name them, all of them came together, and not a single black person was there. However, they considered themselves as having very successful conferences, and what they did is that they hammered out a consensus on Negro education. And what they did was later lamented in the book Miseducation of the Negro. So what all of that goes into, that's Nana Carter G. Woodson, what all of that book goes into is the end result of the Mohawk conferences, which is where they created someone who was going to be that sheepdog. They created someone who was going to be part of that artificial selection that's no longer fighting alongside their racial relatives, but they're now fighting for massa, right? Or it's the what Nana Malcolm X referred to as the house Negro and the field Negro, right? So again, we can look at Stockholm Syndrome, and we could just point our finger and say, that person is suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. This person is suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, but it's something different to diagnose it versus cure it, right? You can say it all day that this person got Stockholm Syndrome. They're fighting for their kidnapper, right? They're fighting against black people. And this is exactly what happened when Nana Gabriel Prosser was trying to make his revolution to overthrow America. To overthrow America, that, he was given up, right, by someone who otherwise would have been a black person, an African person, but that person clearly saw themselves as American. You have meritorious manumission, which was the same thing that was in effect with Nana Denmark Vesey, where you have this sellout house Negro who decided to tell, oh no, I'm gonna tell Master, I'm gonna get a reward. So This is what they did, right? And this is, again, the intentional process to make you betray black people, right? So then they gave up Nana Denmark Vesey, and in return, what did you get out of it, right? This type of sellout mentality. And, again, it's something that is bred into people, right? We need to think about this not just like the person just wants to be bad or whatever, but this person is the intentional creation by the hands of a white man in order to make someone who is no longer acting naturally. In a natural environment, you would fight for your racial relatives. That's what Kemet was all about. That means land of black people, right? We call ourselves Kemetiu, which means black people, what they now call ancient Egypt. We didn't call ourselves that. We call ourselves Kemetiu, which means black people, which is why we were always trying to keep non-blacks out. And we're always trying to extend that land to bring more black people into that fold. So until we really start to understand what's really going on, the manipulation of our consciousness is about manipulating power. And Nana Amos Wilson goes into this, that, to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate power and to manipulate possibilities. So here you have people who are no longer fighting for black people. They're now fighting on behalf of their, white enslavers. And the exact same thing happens both, there in the United States, but then also the same thing happened on the continent, where you have those who, through what's called the quote unquote gun slave cycle, where you have people in communities that were coexisting peacefully prior to that time, but then they say, all right, we're going to give guns. The Dutch would give guns to this one. The Danes would give guns to that one. And they'll say, all right, we're going to give you these guns on credit. However, to pay us back, all you have to do is supply us with prisoners of war from your enemies over there, right? And guess what? If you don't do it, then they're going to come because they got guns, right? So now these white folks are laughing all the way to the bank, right? Because here you have black people who are fighting against other black people, destabilizing everything, right, in service of their white dominators. And, I think that that's really just in a nutshell, where if we're going to maximize our potential, it's very difficult to do so when you're in the context where, we like, even from like first grade, I won the award for the Black History Month quiz in my elementary school, because we were going into all these black inventions. We were going to Nana Gary A. Morgan, right? We would go into, Nana Granville T. Woods, right? just going down the whole line of all of these people, all of their contributions. But ultimately, it's like whatever you create, whatever you invent, the beneficiaries are the ones who are killing you, who are raping you, who are murdering you, right? And you can basically look at it as a situation of that's intentionally what it's designed to do. That now, once you're suffering from Stockholm syndrome, your efforts are not going to build up the Black nation, they're going to build up the white nation. And I know the brother Kobe, he went on to, after he repatriated, he went back to the US and started working in the police force there in Texas and so forth and so on. So, it's a very difficult situation because what you have is that, no matter what, this is what we are programmed to do. So it's not that, or I'm just making a decision. Nana Amos Wilson says, the Black man says that being free is doing whatever I want to do, but how come everything that I want to do just happens to enrich my enslaver, enrich my, colonizer, the white person? So it's like somebody say, I just want those types of sneakers. But this is why advertising is a multi-billion-dollar market, because who convinced you to even want those in the first place? So literally, especially in the United States that I can speak to, we are bred just like sheepdogs in order to, even if you maximize your potential, all of that maximized potential will accrue to your enslavers, to accrue to your colonizer. And then your colonizer is going to take all of your time, your energy, your resources, your money, your very spirit, in order to continue the subjugation of Black people worldwide, globally. And we're aiding and abetting in that process.
Richard Zotra says we need a Dr. Kambon in every Black country. I agree. Dr. Kambon, what is it going to take for a mass exodus out of America to Africa? Black people actually leaving? Because I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So, there are a couple of challenges. One is the aftermath of the Mohawk conferences, which I spoke about, that people are miseducated to the point that, Nana Malcolm X put it best when he said the house Negro versus the field Negro, right? So in that type of process, and again, it's just a typology and an analogy, where that once you become a house Negro, and I went to a place that's designed to create more house Negroes, so I can speak for this, very, very clearly, that the end result of that process is that if the master is sick, then, you're going to say, what's the matter, boss? We sick, right? If the house is burning down, you're going to try to put it out, even before the master would try to put it out. That, whenever you see a Black person who is waving a United States flag, that this is that process of creating a house Negro, right? And if you tell that person, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, that person's going to be like, separate and go where? Where can you get better clothes than this, right? Where can you get a better house than this? And this is that process. So to have a mass exodus will require a mass education system, and there is no education system there in the United States. There is a vast miseducation system. Even the so-called African-centered schools are really African periphery schools, right? That ultimately, as long as they're there in the United States, they are contributing to that cesspool, right? Every time they pay their property taxes, that property tax money is going to go to, aid and abet a criminal, right? And this is basically what a lot of people just want. They're like, I'm fine aiding and abetting a criminal. The analogy I would give is, all right, let's say you have, this person who lives in your house, right? Because they, came in, kicked in the door, so forth and so on, beat you upside the head. And, you got amnesia. You don't even realize that this is supposed to be for you. But now he's told you, oh, no, this is for me. And you know that this person is a murderer, right? You know that every single night this person goes out and kills people. You know that every single night this person goes out and rapes people. You know that every single night this person goes out and robs people. This is what the United States does worldwide, and you're aware of this, right? You may put your head in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, right? But you know this. But you have a decision to make once you know that. You can decide that, okay, you know what? I'm no longer going to aid and abet this enemy. Or you can decide, as long as he breaks me off $20 when he comes back from running and doing his dirt, then I'm just going to keep, helping. I'm going to polish his gun for him, right? I'm going to make sure that his knife is nice and sharp and shiny, right? And this is the situation. This is the decision that is going to be made by every Black person there in the United States, that either they're going to continue and get the quote unquote benefits of slavery by going to Walmart and getting access to whatever it is that they're getting, with the ever-present sickle hanging over their head, that at any time a white person decides they can get Trayvon Martin, any white person, not just a police officer, they could get Ahmaud Arbery, right? They can get, we can go down the list of all of them, and this can happen to them at any time in exchange for, aiding and abetting, because ultimately when you're living with a psychopathic racial personality, as Nana Bobby E. Wright would call it, then at any point in time, he may decide, you didn't sharpen my knife well enough, I'm just going to stab you once or twice, right? But this is a situation when you're in Stockholm syndrome. It's, what Nana Amos Wilson referred to as like battered wife syndrome, right? So the more you get beaten up, the more you say, oh, but I just love him so much. Oh, but I think he still wants good for me. So, that's exactly our situation there in the United States. And this is the intentional and calculated process through the miseducation system to create that. No one is born deciding that I want to be a sellout, an anti-Black house Negro, but all of them are created. All of them are the natural, I don't even want to call it natural, the artificial end result of a process to create sellouts, right? That's what made that sellout who sold out Nana Denmark Vesey. And Nana Denmark Vesey was not an American. He was fighting against America. All of our ancestors have fought against America from 1526 to San Miguel de Guadalupe, all the way up to, you could talk about the Black people like Nana Cosmos Setepenra, right? Michael Xavier, right? All of these people, Nana Mark Essex, right? And, the challenge is that when we're fighting Nana Colin Ferguson, we can go down the list, that all of these people represent those who are fighting tooth and nail against America, and they're fighting for Ma'at. They're fighting for justice, right? They're fighting for truth. If you realize that this United States was founded on genocide and enslavement, right? And I find it so ironic that they have a place called a Department of Justice, and that building is sitting on stolen land. Right. How can you have something called the Department of Justice? So if there's ever to be any justice in the United States, the very first thing that all of them would have to do is to vacate that land and say, it's this very entity that we have created is unjust from its very inception, right? So I think I'll pause on that, and we can continue on. Okay. I went through a whole lot in that very first portion where I got cut off. Yeah. So I can reiterate on of those things, but just pause on that point.
So there's a comment in the chat room. Someone said, and we've heard this objection before. Well, the Africans know what's going on with his brothers and sisters here in America. They haven't sent not one warship to come and save us. What will be your response to that?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the warship to save those here on the continent as well. That the problem is powerlessness, that, both internally to the United States and externally to the United States here on the continent, is that here all throughout the continent, you have every single nation being raped and murdered, right? If you look at southeastern Nigeria, and it's always about the resources that are there. So if you look at the role of Shell there, that there's not a single warship there in southeastern Nigeria to protect the Black people who are being raped, killed, murdered, and genocided by, Royal Dutch Shell, right? There's not a single warship for Eastern Congo either, right? And there you have over 10 million Africans who have been killed since the late 90s. There's not a warship. And again, that's about the resources that are there. And they would probably say, where's the warship from the United States, right? You got all these Black people, you got all these multi-billionaires who are balling out, and that's all they see. They see these videos of all these rich Black people. Where's the warship to stop the blood diamonds in Liberia? The problem is powerlessness, right? To the point where, and this is really, what I think it comes down to, is building up the Black nation that can stand up to and to defeat that white nation, right? That is worldwide. I'm talking about the Chagos Islands here. We're talking about, Pacific Ocean, that area. You have West Papua New Guinea, right, where you have all of these black people who are subjected to genocide, right? Chief Benny Wenda, he came to Ghana soliciting help, saying, Ghana was the first nation to get independence. Then it means Ghana can help us to get independence, to finally raise the flag there. You had Mccain, that's Bougainville in the South Pacific Islands, some of the blackest people in the entire planet Earth, kinkiest hair on the entire planet Earth, who had been isolated for tens of thousands of years, but they had to fight a war by themselves, even though they're blockaded, right? And they're fighting against Rio Tinto Zinc, which at that time was, I want to say, the third largest mining corporation in the world. But as black people, they had to fight by themselves. Now, all the black people in the United States, you could say, well, perhaps they didn't know about it because they're too busy doing whatever it is that they're doing. But, there hasn't been any support because there hasn't been that global Kemet consciousness, right? The consciousness that we are all one nation. And I would say that nation should be called Kemet, land of black people, and that we're all Kemet to you. We're all black people. And what it is that once we have that consciousness, then we'll understand. Is basically the analogy that, I give students here. Picture you have someone who is coming to beat you up, but, you say, well, hold on, until they hit my right hand, then my right hand isn't in the fight. So it's like, well, Nick, it's up to you to fight by yourself. And then your left leg is like, well, until they step on my left toe, then I'm not going to do anything. And then, the right leg is like, well, until they, kick me in the knee, I'm not going to do anything. If you saw somebody who was trying to fight like that, then you would say that person is insane. But essentially, this is what's going on, is that we don't see ourselves as that global nation of Kemet. So therefore, when Bougainville, so-called Bougainville, properly termed Mccain, is under attack by Rio Tinto Zinc, by the government of Australia, by all these white mercenaries, no black people are coming to their assistance. When the Chagos Islands are being, stolen literally from those people, and they're being relocated to Seychelles and Madagascar, you name it, then there are no black people who are coming because we don't see ourselves as one global black nation. When the black people in India, the CD people, are being killed, raped, murdered, lobotomized, sodomized, there's no single black nation that's coming up to step and do that. When black people in the United States are getting knees put on their neck, there's no, help for that. When Liberia and Sierra Leone, and what's really behind it, you can look at De Beers and the diamond cartels and them funding Houphouët-Boigny and Côte d'Ivoire, who made Côte d'Ivoire now a base of operations, for the so-called rebel group, again, funded and bankrolled by France, right, in order to destabilize the region so that they could now get all these blood diamonds for free. But again, where are the warships coming to, save the black people who are there? If you look at, northeastern Mali, northeastern Niger and northeastern Mali, right there at the border, you look at all these conflicts there, that's really about France securing their nuclear energy, which is right there in northwestern Niger, right? But where are the warships that are coming for that? So globally, all black people are under siege by the white nation that comes together as one white nation, which we saw very clearly at the Berlin Conference. But until we have this national consciousness that we are one nation, and that an attack on any part of us is an attack on all of us, then it's like Nana Malcolm X said. He said that until Africa is a world power, no black person anywhere in the world will be respected, right? And this is exactly what we see. We see black people, Yuri Jallo, right, in Germany, who was burned alive. Where are the warships going to Germany, right? You can see Julian Cole, right, in the UK, right, being beaten to the point that his spine is severed. Where are the warships going to the UK, right? We're waiting for the United States, the black people in the United States, to do that, right? The favelas in Brazil, you have black people who are subjected to genocide there, right? Where are the warships going to Brazil, and where are they coming from? Who has those warships that they're sending it to any place else, right? And we could go on and on all throughout the continent. We can look at how all of these things. You could look at Darfur, right? That's about the oil that's right there underfoot there in Darfur, and we could go on and on and on. But again, we are all subjected to genocide at the hands of the white nation that operates as a Eurasian nation, one single Eurasian nation, that and their progeny. But until we operate like one single black nation, then, these injustices will continue on. So this is really our work, right? To globally see ourselves as one nation, but to come back to the point that as long as we see ourselves as Black America, this means that, okay, well, until you step on my left toe, then I'm not in the fight, right? You could look at the Black people who are being killed in Brazil, and they're like, well, until you, hit my right elbow, I'm not in the fight. You can look at the Black people on the continent, and they're like, well, until you hit me right here in the gut, I'm not in the fight, right? You can look at those in South Africa, they're like, okay, well, until you hit me right here on this left eyebrow, I'm not in the fight. You could look at the Black people in the South Pacific Islands who are like, well, until you, kick me on the right shin, the left shin, I'm not in the fight. And this is really what we're subjected to. And again, to extend this analogy, if you saw somebody in, let's say, MMA or something, they're trying to fight like that, you'd be like, this person is absolutely insane. But again, this is what insanity is. And this is the reason why these pale white Eurasians have donated all these terms to us, called Afro-Brazilian, called Black American, called Nigerian, called Ghanaian. All of these are fragment identities. And I'm including all these Berlin Conference neo-colonial cages there among the fragment identities, that there's nothing that's any better about being a Ghanaian versus calling yourself a Black American, because what all of that is dividing the single one Black nation to the ultimate benefit of the ones who created all of these fragmentary, falsified identities. We need to see ourselves globally as one single Black nation. Once we see that, now we can start saying, well, now that we understand that we're global Kemet, right, land of the Blacks, how does global Kemet want to respond to George Floyd? How does global Kemet want to respond to Ahmaud Arbery? And then you could say, okay, well, we don't have the military might, but what we can decide to do is to divest from the white nation, right, to whatever extent that we're able to. And that's, ultimately what took so-called apartheid South Africa to its knees, is by divesting. And I remember in the 80s that we were part of that movement. And that's the reason why to this day, we've never, right, in my family, we've never, ever bought any petrol or gas, as they call it there in the United States, from Shell, because we realize that all of these criminals are doing nothing. We're financing our enemies. We're financing our oppressors. We're financing the ones who are raping and murdering and pillaging and plundering. So rather than, fighting against the spider web, let's take it to the spider. And if you don't have the power to crush the spider, then what you can do is you can starve that spider to death, right? You can decide that rather than being on a YouTube, that you'll be on a bbtumi.tv. You can decide that instead of being on a Neanderthal book, that you're going to be on a bbtumi.com. You can decide that rather than being on a Patreon or whatever, you know what, let's have our own things. And it's not enough to just say that we should have our own. And this is, my challenge to all these Black people who love these white platforms, because again, we're functioning on fragment consciousness, that as long as this good white man at Patreon is good to me, then all right, it's cool. As long as this good white man on Crackerbook hasn't put me into Crackerbook jail, then, I'm cool. As long as I haven't gotten my copyright strikes from YouTube, then okay, I'm cool. What we see on an individual level is the same thing that we see in these neo-colonial cage levels, right? That it's just about as long as I can survive. It's only when they come to me that's an issue. So a lot of the Black people there in the United States are like, well, it's only an issue when George Floyd gets killed. All right, but what about the Black people who are getting killed in Russia, right? What about the Black people who are getting killed in India, right? You have Ketanda Olivier, who was beaten to death in broad daylight over a rickshaw. Where are the warships coming from the United States to India out of outrage, right? Or even where's the boycott of India? Where's the, all right, we don't want your statue and we don't want your money. Now here in Ghana, the Indian government gave $1 million to the president of Ghana, right, to refurbish his house, right? And then they said they're going to give $200 million to build a new parliament building. So basically what they're saying is that we've bought your head of state and then we've also bought your lawmakers. So, that's what. And they're in a proxy war with China over who is going to control Africa, because everybody knows that whosoever controls this continent, now misnamed Africa, is going to control the world. And, really global Kemet, we have to have some type of thing where we say, all right, we're not going to finance our enemies anymore. So all throughout the world, we can make that decision. We can say, all right, at least if as global Kemet, we say we're not going to buy draws from any Haynes, Fruit of the Loom, or any other Neanderthal business, any other cave beast business. Well, guess what? Overnight, Haynes and Fruit of the Loom and all these folks are going to be out of business, right? One single decision, as frivolous as what draws we're going to wear, would change the entire cotton industry. It would change the entire, manufacturing industry globally. One single decision, but we can only do that when we see ourselves globally. But what all of these, Eurasian Neanderthals do and their lackeys do is that they continue to make us see ourselves as, I'm, Jamaican, I'm Cuban, I'm Ghanaian, right? I'm South African. That's the so-called xenophobia. They thrive off of that. So meanwhile, they're coming together as the Berlin Conference. And at the Berlin Conference, some people say European. Again, we know that there's no such continent as Europe, right? It's just the westernmost peninsula of the land that's called Eurasia. And no Eurasians have ever had our interests at heart, right? We're talking about those who have mutations in the gene SLC24A5 and OCA2 polymorphism, all of these non-Black people in short. So Russia was there at the Berlin Conference. So it's not just an imaginary thing called Europe. They're saying all white people. Turkey was there at the Berlin Conference. The United States was there. And as a matter of fact, the United States was the very first nation to recognize Leopold's claim to the Congo. And the rest of history, over 10 million Black people killed in the Congo, hands cut off. Where's the warship coming from the Black people in the United States to the Congo to save them? Now, I will say that there were protests. People would say things, so forth and so on. There's good research that's been done by Dr. Tyreen Wright, where she goes into the role of Booker T. Washington.
Oh, yeah, some of his our book, Booker T. Washington, The Making of a Pan-African, correct? Yeah, I got
exactly. And when we talk about Pan-Africanism, that this is the core, all Black people coming together on the basis of what we have in common ancestry and common descent. And as long as we call ourselves Black Americans, it means that we're dumber than every single social creature, social animal on the entire planet Earth. So if you look at zebras, right? Zebras may fight amongst each other over who gets to mate, but when there are lions in the area, they come together on the basis of what they have in common ancestry and common descent. That's the only thing that's real. This means that we're dumber than sardines, right? If you look on the southeastern coast of the continent now known as Africa, more properly called part of global Kemet, that the sardines are attacked by fur seals and by whales and by sharks and, even birds that dive down into the ocean and swim to get at them. But they come together in shoals and in schools on the basis of what they have in common ancestry and common descent. Lions come together against hyenas on the basis of common ancestry or common descent. Hyenas come together against lions on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. Ants come together against termites. Termites come together against ants. Every single creature that intends on surviving comes together on the basis of what they have in common. And the only thing that's real is not class, is not gender, it's not any of those things. It's common ancestry and common descent. And if we need any lessons in that, look at the Berlin Conference. Prior to the Berlin Conference, all of these non-Blacks were killing each other. They were murdering each other. They were blowing each other out of the water with cannons, right? And the Berlin Conference was convened in order to basically mitigate that type of situation. And they came together and said essentially that, look, no matter what problems we have amongst each other, those problems should never supersede the problems we have with all non-white people, right? And therefore they said, just like during enslavement, it's not about class, because you have this book that was released recently, Barracoon, and you have Nana Kujo Kasola, who was a ruler of his people, right? But he got enslaved, right? And taken to the United States just like the lowliest member of his society. So they didn't say, all right, well, we're only going to enslave the lower class and then leave the upper class. We're only going to enslave the upper class and leave the lower class. It's not about gender. They didn't say, oh, we're only going to enslave the women and then leave the men, or we're only going to enslave the men and leave the women. That the only thing that is real is common ancestry and common descent. Every single creature on the planet Earth understands this, except for Black people who have been miseducated by their white enemies in order to think that there's something called a Cuban, to make them think that there's something called a Jamaican or a Haitian or a Black American or an Afro-Brazilian or a Ghanaian or a Senegalese or whatever. The only thing that's real is common ancestry, common descent, common Black people, one single Black nation. And once we start acting like that, then when we're in this, metaphorical MMA contest, we can win that fight, because we can decide that once you hit me in my jaw, I'm not going to say, okay, well, jaw, you got to fend for yourself, hit them back with your jaw. You can say, all right, no, I'm going to knee you, because that's part of the single one global Black body. No, I'm going to kick you, because that's part of the single global Black body. I'm going to headbutt you, because that's part of the single global Black body. Now, I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago, and it was entitled What Those Who Think Black Lives Actually Matter Can Learn from the Original White Lives Matter movement. And people are like, original White Lives Matter? You mean the ones who have hashtags on Twitter? Or you mean the ones who are wearing T-shirts and a meeting at Charlottesville and whatever? I'm like, no, that's not it. When I'm talking about the original White Lives Matter movement, I'm talking about, for example, in Kenya, 1902, right? August of 1902, where here you have this police constable who was killed, and they're saying, okay, what we're going to do, not what we're going to do, what we did, he's talking about in past tense, is that we went and we killed 17 N-words, and he uses the N-word. You'll think it's written by some governor of Mississippi, right? It's written by a British, killer, enslaver, colonial enemy, as I call it. And they decide that they're going to, and he said, then the fun began. We burned down all of their huts, and then we killed every single N-word was shot or bayoneted. So one single white person is killed. They decided to take the war to all of the Wakikuyu. The next month, same thing. The Wakikuyu, they decided to kill another police officer. And they said, okay, we got word of it from a native, right? One of these sellout anti-Black house Negroes. And he decided that his own individual survival, Trump collective survival, that's what being a sellout is all about. Your own individual survival, Trump's collective survival across the board. So he went and reported to the British that they had done this, and they went to the village and they killed all of the people there, right? Every single last one that they could get their hands on, they killed every single last one. And they said they were going to leave the children, and it would be so that the children could have a fear of, this white man. So they said, we're going to make an exception just so that they can learn that white lives matter. One single white life is the equivalent of all of your Black lives put together. And this is what they did time and again, right? If you want to look at these punitive expeditions, look at Benin, for example, where you had these British who were trying to impinge on the economic sovereignty of the Benin Empire. And they said, you know what? We're going to kill one of these, or kill this expedition of the British. So what the British did, and this is documented in The West and the Rest of Us by Nach and Wezu. So what they decided to do is that they, in their punitive expedition, this is when you see the Benin bronze mask and these Benin, brass casting, bronze, so forth and so on, that they decided to kill all of the there we go. You know exactly what I'm talking about. They decided to go and kill all of the Black people there that they could get their hands on, steal all of their wealth. And there's a good documentary called You Hide Me, where Ni Kwasi Owo, he actually was able to talk his way into the basement of the British Museum and see for the first time by Black eyes all these things that were stolen. The exact same thing happened, the punitive expedition to Asante, punitive expedition. And then the same thing happened in the United States. If you look at race riots, they would say, oh, this 3-year-old girl was killed, and then a race riot comes up and then they go and kill everybody, right? You can look at Rosewood, you can look at Colfax, Louisiana. This is for the people who think that they're Black Americans or that there's any such thing in the world, right? You can look at Wilmington, North Carolina, right? White folks' feelings get hurt. Guess what? We're going to kill all the Black people in sight, right? And we can go on and on down the list. That all of that is the White Lives Matter movement. If a single white life is if a single white hair is out of place, they kill all the Black people in sight, right? If you look at the lynchings, that this is how they convince all these Black people that white lives matter. And again, this is part of their pedagogical method by teaching us that lesson. And in turn, this is how you get the sellouts, because they say, you know what, I learned that lesson that white lives matter, right? They didn't go about it by marching, sharing hashtags and whatever. They went about it by teaching us that their lives matter by killing all the Black people in exchange for that one single white life. and you can see very clearly that somebody steps on your shoe, you'll shoot that person down. Somebody's wearing the wrong flag or got their hat tilted to the wrong side in Chicago, then you kill that person. But guess what? Everybody got guns, but a single white police officer shows up, everybody runs. That's because they learned that lesson, that white lives matter, and they learned it at great expense time and time again. So that's the core of what I'm talking about. We have one single Black nation, but unfortunately, very few of us are aware that we should be operating as a single Black nation, and we need a Goal conference, right? An Addis Ababa conference or whatever. And that's what Nana Thomas Sankara said. He said, they got their club, we need our club, and we're not going to pay our debt. If we stand together as a single Black nation, then we can say we're not paying off the debt. But, within short order of him even saying that, they sent, and I'm talking about France, they sent Blaise Compaoré to do the dirty work, where again, he was able to launch his operation in Côte d'Ivoire, because Houphouët-Boigny, they call him the man of France in Africa, right? They say he's not Africa, he's a man of France in Africa doing their bidding. And then they were able to launch that offensive and then ultimately take down Nana Thomas Sankara. So again, the core of what I'm saying is the only thing that's real is none of these fake fraud nationalities. It's none of these classes. It's none of this people want to be this gender or that, whatever. The only thing that's real is common ancestry and common descent. Every creature that intends on surviving understands this across the board. Orcas come together on the basis of common ancestry, common descent against so-called great white sharks. Now, if you look at a great white shark, the majority of it is Black, only the underside is white. And I think they called it that because they didn't want it to be called what it really should be called is Black on top, white on the bottom shark, right? But they come together on the basis of what they have in common in order to be the top predator in the entire ocean, right? Nobody feeds on them. They feed on whatever they want, including so-called great white sharks. You can look at every creature on the entire planet Earth that intends on surviving, which is all of them, except for Black people who've been miseducated. They come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. Meanwhile, we come together on the basis of imaginary, falsified consciousness and manipulation of imagery.
Right. Guys, hit that like button. Please hit that like button, you guys. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see here. Let me read the super chat. There are Blacks who are no good here and likewise will not be good in Africa. We need intellectual, right, and those who practice mechanical arts, not consumers. So wanted to read that super chat.
For those who don't know, that is a direct quote from Nana Marcus Garvey, where he said that he's not trying to bring everybody from the United States to Africa, because there are Blacks who are no good there in the United States. And just as there are Blacks who are no good, and they will be no good once they come to the continent. And these are the sellouts. They've been programmed. And I don't get mad at the sellout. It's like I'm going to get mad at the knife. Don't get at the knife that was manufactured to stab. Get mad at the one who is wielding the knife willfully, right? So this person is like Steve Biko said. He said that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. So here you have somebody who is nothing but an instrument. He is a weapon. I don't get mad at this sellout house Negro. I could, right? And maybe we can do something to the knife itself. But this person is nothing but a weapon that has been intentionally fashioned in order to do the bidding of the one who is wielding the weapon. So rather than get mad at the weapon, you got to get mad at the process that created that weapon, the one who convinced that person all growing up that Christopher Columbus discovered America, right? Who boiled people alive and sick dogs on the children, right? This is the criminal who this person has from childhood been taught to admire. This is someone who was taught to sing for the national anthem without ever getting that last verse that talks about, the crushing of Black people who are fighting for their liberty, right? They never got that last verse of the national anthem, which is why throughout my entire life, I never stood up for the national anthem. I never stood up for the Pledge of Allegiance. In our family, we knew that, we're not Americans, we're African anti-Americans, so we don't stand for that, right? We can look at the person who has been taught from childhood that the greatest genius is Einstein, and they've never heard of Imahu Imhotep. This is somebody who has been manufactured to be an anti-Black sellout house Negro. So how are you going to get mad at the end product? It's like here's an assembly line in a factory to create more house Negroes, and then you're going to get mad at the product of the factory. here is an AK-47, and you're like, oh, this AK-47 must be broken because it's shooting people. Guess what? Hello, not. It's designed to shoot people. This means it's doing exactly what it's manufactured to do. So, it's really amazing that any of us don't have Stockholm syndrome, and any of us aren't fighting tooth and nail for, these, Neanderthals and cave beasts. It's amazing that any of us, because we've all gone through that manufacturing process, we've all gone through that factory. However, in any factory, you have defects, right? Unintentional and unintended end results where it didn't come out as it's supposed to come out. You're supposed to be a Black American. You're supposed to be a Black British. You're supposed to be a Black German. You're supposed to be a Black Frenchman. But guess what? You came out and you understand that you're a Cometi. You're a Black person. That's our earliest identity. Going back to 4,200 years ago, right? We're talking about in the reign of Nesubiti Merenra Pepi, who they call Pepi II. This is where you have the first attestation of us calling ourselves Kemetiu, Black people. Then about 100 to 200 years after that, in the so-called first intermediate period, here you see us calling the land Kemet, land of Black people. But again, during the time of Nesubiti Merenra Pepi, you had all of these people calling themselves Henenit Kim, right? Or Hepi Kim means Henenit the Black and Hepi the Black. So our identity way back then, because we're so close to our non-Black enemies, was that, look, we're going to call our land Kemet, meaning the land of Black people, and we're going to call ourselves Kemetiu, again, meaning Black people. But once we stray away from that, and we're talking about in the reign mainly of Nesubiti Jehuti Mes, right, who they call Tutmosis III, this is where you see us starting to stray away from that. And then this is what Nana Chancellor Williams refers to as the destruction of Black civilization. So anytime we hold on to that principle of common ancestry and common descent, and again, this is our earliest, our original identity, this is when it's smooth sailing for us. But anytime we abandon that and then we start functioning on fragment consciousness, whether it's a fragment of, okay, well, we're Nahasyu, so later for y'all, right? Or we're this or we're that, or it's Kemet versus Nahasyu or Nahasyu versus Kemet. This is when we start to be subjected rather to fragment consciousness. And we've done this multiple times, and every single time we do this, then we see that it leads to the destruction of Black civilization. Every time we do this as individuals, right, you can see that this leads to the destruction of Black civilization. So what I would always say is that we need to come together on the basis of the principle of Abibitumi, Black power, in order to restore Ma'at in the world. So instead of this person got their own, StreamYard channel, and that person got their own StreamYard channel, and we're all just trying to get whatever crumbs the white man gives us, right? Then let's all come together on the basis of being Black, and let's build up Black power. Let's build up our own platform in order to do that. What most people do is that we'll be on white platforms and we'll say, yeah, we need to have our own. Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, we do. Then we get 1,000 likes. We get a little bit of money into our PayPal accounts. And then we just, wash, rinse, and recycle to the next time. And then the next person says, yeah, we need to have our own. Yeah, we sure do. We get another 1,000 likes. We get a couple of extra dollars in our PayPal accounts. And then we say, aha, this is a good scam that we got going here. Yeah. And we wonder why we make so little progress is that it's all about lip service, right? This person is just saying that so that they could get a few extra followers, a few extra subscribers, but we never actually do what it is that we say that we should do. Once we do it, then we'll be on a BBTumi. Then we'll be on a bbtumi.tv, a bbtumitv.com. And that's not the end result, right? That's not what we're striving for, but it's at least one step further in that direction than, all right, well, you got your thing on YouTube. This guy got his thing on Crackerbook. This person got their thing wherever, that we can actually come together and actually build Black power. What we tend to do is we speak against white power without actively building Black power. And this is the only way, again, for us to be that global power that can not only stand up to, but to defeat the single non-Black nation, right? All these Eurasians and their progeny function as one single nation. However, we function on the basis of fragment consciousness, which is why we're able to be defeated time and time again.
Absolutely, guys. Hit that like button. And let's see here. Any more questions? Oh, real quick, Dr. Kambon, if you want to, because as you mentioned earlier in the transmission, we had lost you. If you kind of want to recap where the portion of where we lost connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of this ties in very closely because where we get lost is really, you can look at 1988, which is when you see the rise of the term African American. Um, and this is, again, when Jesse Jackson and others endorsed that term. And you find that this put us back into the shadow of America as opposed to a much broader identity of, look, we're all Black people, right? Regardless of location, where you'll see somebody in Haiti say, all right, that person is Black. You'll see somebody from wherever, all right, that person is Black. This is my brother. This is my sister. What up, bro? What up? And, once we start calling ourselves Americans, the reason why they donated that term to us, naming ourselves after America's Vespucius, right? This white Italian based out of Florence, Italy. The reason why they give us and donate all of these fake identities to us is because they realize that as long as we see ourselves as a fragment, it's like just my pinky finger is going to fight against this entire white guy, right? Here's a 200-pound white guy, the light heavyweight champion, but you're going to fight against just my pinky finger. All right, who do you think is going to win that? And that's what the Berlin Conference was all about. All white people coming together against the entire Black nation and, basically making us understand that we're not a single Black nation. And you actually saw this, at the time. So you have Asante that was being attacked by the British, and they reached out to Dahomey. Mm-hmm. And Dahomey said, well, the oracle says that whoever makes the gunpowder wins the wars, and they declined to help. But then just a couple years after that, here you have the French coming to destroy Dahomey. And now there is no Asante to come, up in order to fight collectively against these, pale white cave beasts. Now they all had this bargain, this embargo, where they said that modern weapons will not be given to any Black people. You can sell them outdated Dane guns and muskets and whatever, breech loading rifles, front loader, whatever. But you can't sell Black people Maxim guns and cannons and so forth and so on. And my brother Onwara Abua, he just released a documentary on bbtumitv.com called Kano, where it went into how the way that they were able to destroy Kano, the British, was that they had cannons. And then he asked them, well, what weapons were the people of Kano fighting with? He said, we have bows and arrows and spears, right? And other weapons against, cannons. Well, guess what, right? Yeah. So, with that, you can see the same thing. I read a documentary, The Kaiser's Forgotten Holocaust. Germany's, forgotten genocide, the Kaiser's Holocaust, Germany's forgotten genocide in Namibia. And it goes into how when the Germans decided to launch this extermination order against the Herero people, that, at that time, they reached out to the Nama people, but the Nama people mistrusted the Herero people because we didn't see ourselves as all one Black nation, right? So now the Herero people are wiped out to the brink of extermination. Those who weren't exterminated there were, driven out, right, trying to escape across the desert. Now, later on, the Germans then took the war to the Namakwa people, but guess what? There are no Herero people to fight as a common united front as Black people against their non-Black enemies. And, it's, again, divide and conquer is what in military science they refer to as defeating the enemy in detail. And you find in, battles like Angelut and so forth and so on, that you have these types of tactics that are done where what they would do is they'll encircle the entire enemy army, but then intentionally they'll open up a breach in that encirclement so that a small band can escape out. Now that band thinks, yeah, great, we're escaping, but then they close it back up. And now what they do is that they send a smaller regiment to destroy and obliterate that smaller regiment that thought that they were escaping, right? And they just repeat that process again and again. So now we open up another breach. 50 go out, but then we send out 100, soldiers against them, and then we completely obliterate that one. This is a military strategy that they do. So Black American is basically going for it, right? It's essentially being part of that 50 that you think that you're escaping from this smaller thing, but then ultimately you're doing absolutely nothing, right? So where we went wrong is, initially you look at 1787, you see the Free African Society. This means that we saw ourselves as a much broader identity than anything called American. It's not a nation state concept. It's that we're all African people regardless of location. And we had things like the African Methodist Episcopal, Church. We had things like the African Lodge. what this means is that we saw ourselves as all connected Black people, regardless of location. If you look at the 1900 Conference on Pan-Africanism, it uses the term Negro, African, and Black interchangeably. All of this speaks to that broader identity. And, you know, what these pale white Eurasians did is that they got us to fight for something called civil rights in the United States, to be second, third, fourth, fifth class citizens, so-called, right? And now you got people who, because of, you know, Cracker Book and Nitwitter and all these other places, they want to be second class global citizens. Oh, I'm not African, I'm a global citizen. Well, guess what? You're a second class global citizen, because any place on the earth that you go to, you can be subjected to getting, you know, beaten and stabbed, right? Burned alive, right? And we got so many of these types of cases. So this is really to the point that where we go wrong is the only place that anyone who get defeated go wrong is by seeing yourself as a fragment, right? So what you can see is that hyenas can kill lions when they come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. But when they think, oh, it's just me, my hyena against your pride of lions, that's where they get killed, right? So lions can be killed by hyenas when the hyenas come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. Hyenas also can be killed by lions when lions come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. You can look up, and I have on a BB Tumi, Lessons from Nature for Kemetiu. It's a group that I created there. And there's something called the battle at Kruger, and that's Kruger National Park. And what you see is that all of these water buffalo are able to come together and completely stomp out and drive away lions who had attacked one of their calves, right? This is what, you know, water buffalo can do when they come together on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. That's the only thing that's ever real, right? But if it's, oh, that calf over there is a Black American, later for it, because I'm a Black Jamaican, well, guess what? That calf is going to be killed, and all of you are going to be defeated in detail, one by one, picked off. And you can look at, this is how wolves hunt. I have another video that I posted up there on how wolves hunt bison. And what they do, all of the bison, as long as they stand their ground, and it's so apt of an analogy. As long as these bison, they stand their ground, the wolves can't do anything with them, right? And it's actually dangerous for the wolves to even approach them, because they can get stomped out and their, you know, back can be broken by any of these bison. But when these bison start to lose their nerve and then they start to run, this is essentially and, you know, these Neanderthals, they say that they're descended from wolves. If you read, they talk about Romulus and Remus and, you know, Rome and so forth and so on. They say that they're descended from wolves. That's mythology, but you can see that they use the exact same hunting tactics with Black people as prey that wolves use with bison. That what they'll do is they'll create confusion within the group. And when I say they create confusion, that what they do is that they make the bison start to, you know, it's about me. And again, all selloutism, whether it's among Black people or bison, is about worrying about your individual survival and salvation as opposed to collective survival. So now once they get the bison on the run, now they're able to pick off the weak, right? That's the Black American, right? They're able to pick off, you know, the one who is undefended, either too young or too old or sickly, and then they're able to, you know, have a nice feast. This is what wolves do all the time. And this is the exact same thing that these pale white Eurasians do to Black people, is they create confusion. Now, how do they create confusion? They create confusion by donating ideologies like Marxism, like capitalism, like socialism, like communism, like feminism, like every single ism that they've ever given us is wolf hunting tactics, right? And now they've created sufficient confusion or gender confusion or whatever. They create sufficient confusion in the group to make you think that it's no longer about common ancestry and common descent. It's about you as an individual, right? Or a fragmented identity that doesn't even exist in reality. This is what it's all about. And there are so many of these types of lessons. When you look at the miseducation system, you can look at something called cordyceps. And what cordyceps is a type of fungus. And what happens is when one of the spores of this fungus lands on an ant, now this ant no longer thinks, you know, ants think collectively, right? It's crowd think, right? They all think as one. But once one of these spores lands on an ant, it's called cordyceps, then now the ant starts acting very strange, right? It starts going off on its own. It starts, trying to climb a tree, and then it goes to the side of the tree, and it's always the same side of the tree, where it's just the right amount of humidity, just the right amount of shade that's perfect for the cordyceps fungus that's growing inside of it. And what it does is it actually takes over its entire nervous system, right? And now basically you have an ant that's no longer functioning for the interests of ants as a collective. It's functioning for the interest of the fungus that is implanted into it. And this is what the Mohawk Conference is all about, is you've got a fungus implanted into you called Black Americanism, and you're no longer functioning on the basis of Black regardless of location. You're now functioning on the basis of the fungus that's put into you. What, again, Miseducation of the Negro, that book is all about. And now you're serving the interests of that fungus, right? And now ultimately entire colonies of ants can be wiped out, from this. And there are just so many of these types of lessons in nature. You can also look at this. There are what are called slave making ants in California. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's, have you seen this?
No, I haven't, no.
Yeah, so people who are interested in nature, you can get lots of lessons if you have the eyes to see it. But there are what are called slave-making ants, and these are ants, red ants, that all that they do is raid Black ants. Look at this analogy, right? This is real. All they do is raid Black ants. Their mandibles over time, their mandibles are good for nothing. They can't even chew anymore. They're entirely dependent on these Black ants. And all they can do is that they go and they raid the Black ant colony, and then they steal the larvae of these Black ants. Then they bring it back to their own nest, right? And then what happens is, because ants operate on smell signatures, right? These pheromones that they emit, because they operate on these smell signatures, these Black ant larvae, they're not seeing what's going on. They think from birth that they are red ants. This is They think that they're red ants. So all that they do, because they have functioning mandibles and whatever, they go and they feed the red ants. They go out to serve the red ants, right? So every single day they go feed the red ants, and all the red ants do is that they lounge around. They literally are like in a pile. It looks like an ant orgy. And then they just lounge around. They get fed, and then they wait. They go out and raid more Black ants, right? Yeah. This happens multiple times during the year, 2-3 times during the year. And what is so profound about this analogy is that this pheromone, the scenting of the Black ants, is exactly the process of miseducation that creates a Black American, right? It's the exact same process. Now, interestingly enough, there's a few scientific articles. I posted those on a BB to me on that same thread. There are a few scientific articles that the Black ants are not as helpless as was thought previously, that every so often they have rebellions. Picture this, man. These Black ants have rebellions.
And let me interject. Let me interject. I'm guessing the Black ants. So when they have the rebellion, the Black ants will try to quell the rebellion from the other Black ants. Am I?
Right. So these are sellout Black ants, right? So this is what happens, and I'll give you, this is the scientific research that's done on it, is that what happens is the Black ants, they don't attack the red ants directly. What they do is they start to kill the larvae, right? These are the young of the red ants. And, there are different thoughts in terms of what gets them to snap into this Black ant consciousness, right? It's like, I couldn't make this up if I tried, right? What gets them that sometimes they say, okay, well, maybe there's something in the red ant pheromone, the larvae signature, that makes them realize that this is something wrong going on. Then they start killing them. And what's interesting is that these Black ants themselves don't benefit, because these are drone ants. They're not queen ants. They can't reproduce on the basis of this. But what it does is it lessens the pressure of these red ants. And it means that those red ants, there are less of them to go and attack the original colony that they come from. So this is why we thank Nana Nat Turner. This is why we thank Nana Gabriel Prosser, because these are not Americans. These are anti-Americans. These are the ones who would have, and this is actually what Nana Nat Turner said. When you read the original confessions of Nat Turner, he talks about he went into the cabin. Oh, hold on. We forgot something. We left the baby. So then they go back, bam, bam, dash that, white baby's skull across the wall there. And this is the exact analogy to what the black ants do in killing the larvae of these red ants. And it's just so profound to see what goes on in terms of these black ants are making a sacrifice. And this is what happened in Haiti, right? Because if those whites who were killed in the Haitian Revolution weren't killed, this means there would have been more white people to put knees on our necks in Milwaukee, right? This means there would have been more white people to, in Louisiana, to do the Colfax, Louisiana massacre. Because again, a lot of those whites in Haiti, they escaped into Louisiana, French territory, right? As long as it lasted before it became part of the Louisiana Purchase, that they escaped into that. There would have been more white people to be killing black people if not for that. So essentially, it's the same thing that they lessen the pressure. Same thing, when we look at Jamaica. Same thing when we look at the Imale revolt in Brazil. That essentially these are black people who snapped into this black consciousness and started to fight on the basis of the only thing that is real: common ancestry and common descent.
All right, question. Shout out to Ya Ankara Akan. Please have Nana Kambon tell us how the difference between the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group sank African unity.
Very good. This is something that we teach in African studies as though this is like a major landmark thing. Neither one of those groups is about black people coming together on the basis of being black, on the basis of common ancestry and common descent. So some will say, okay, well, Casablanca group, Monrovia group, one is fighting for continental African unity. The other one is fighting for, more regional bloc, type of unity, so forth and so on, saying that they will jealously guard their national interests of their newly found independence, so forth and so on. But this is the false dichotomy. And as long as we get caught into these false dichotomies, we will continue to, suffer the consequences. So if you look at Nana Kwame Nkrumah, what he attempted to do is continental unity. This is white Arab on top, black people on the bottom. This is not black people coming together. And what original Pan-Africanism, I have a talk about this as well. What original Pan-Africanism was about black people coming together on the basis of being black. That's it. Read the 1900 Declaration to the Nations of the World. From that conference, they're talking about black people. They mentioned Haiti, they mentioned Liberia, they mentioned Abyssinia, and any other nations that emerged, black nations, right? They talk about the freedom of the black people, of the Negroes, of the Africans. They say the black people of Congo. They're always clear that they're only talking about black people. But what Nana Kwame Nkrumah did is that he hijacked the term Pan-Africanism and he decided to introduce a new term, all African, right? And if you look at the AAPC conference, 1958, that this is a conference where Libya is invited, who else? Algeria, the Arab Republic, United Arab Republic. They actually invited the Dutch Boers in South Africa to this conference, right? And the Britishers there. They invited all of these, Neanderthals, these imperialists on the land of black people to this conference because they themselves were not clear on what it means to be African equals black. They didn't have this identity of we're all black people. Let's come together on the basis of being black. And even Nana Kwame Nkrumah, he spoke voraciously against what he calls racialism, coming together on the basis of being black, right? He's about a class analysis. He calls himself a Marxist and a non-denominational Christian, and he sees no contradiction between the two. So neither one of those groups is talking about the only thing that is real, which is coming together as black people on the basis of being black, right? So that didn't sink African unity. And even when we say African unity, we have to be very clear. We're not talking about unity between whoever happens to be on the continent. We're talking about the power of black people. We're not even talking about unity. Unity isn't even the core of what it's about. It's about black people having enough power to stand up to and defeat our non-black enemies. This is the bait and switch of, as opposed to having us think about power, the power to defeat our enemies, we think about unity, right? And then we're not even uniting with who we should unite with. And we see that very clearly when Haiti applied to join the African Union in 2016, they were rejected on the basis of this continentalist concept, right? Meanwhile, Morocco applies to join, and again, according to section 29.1 of the AU's Constitutive Act, it says that it's only open to African nations. So Morocco, where they regard African people, they regard the indigenous black people as abid, which is the word for black person and slave, right? They applied to join, and then they were welcomed with open arms. This is what happens. We don't even know. And this is even why I would advocate ultimately getting rid of the term African, right? And going back to the term Kemet for the land. And when I say Kemet, I mean every land that is a majority Black, right? So I'm not just talking about the continent. I'm saying that if we see that a place like Haiti is majority Black, we need to understand that this is part of global Kemet in the sense of what Kemet actually meant, the land of Black people. If we see a place like Meccain, where you see all these Black people, the blackest people on the face of the planet Earth, up there with Sudan, right, south of Sudan, then we need to understand that's part of global Kemet. If we see, the Black people on the continent, if we see the Black people in the Caribbean, if we see the Black people in the south of the United States, we need to know that we're all part of one nation, and that is global Kemet. Now, the reason why I say that we should jettison the term Africa is because, one, it's etymologically opaque. What do I mean? There are at least 8 or so different or more etymologies that are proposed for the term Africa. Some people say it comes from Ifran, which is a set of caves in the Sahara. Some say it comes from Ifriqiya, which is a Berber tribe. Some people say, it comes from Afrique or Aprike, either a Greek or Phoenician term, meaning sunny or without cold. Some will say, no, it comes from Africanus, either Scipio Africanus, or some will say, no, it comes from Leo. That whatever it is, none of those terms tell you that this is the land of Black people, right? Mm-hmm. None of those terms. But then even more to the point is that when we look at how that word Africa even comes into English is through Latin, right? Where after the Punic Wars, you have the defeat of Carthage, what they call Carthage, and the Romans decide to call their newly conquered province Provincia Africa Proconsularis, right? Which is the province of Africa, which is maintained by the proconsul. So you have the Council of Rome, and the proconsul is basically like the vice consular of this territory. And all that territory is a teeny tiny thin strip of land, which is just the coastal part of what's now modern day Algeria, coastal part of modern day Tunisia, and coastal part of modern day Libya. It's not even all of any of those, but through what's called synecdoche or pars pro toto in the Greek or Roman term for what they did, they decided to apply this the name that they gave to this teeny tiny thin strip of land to the rest of as far as they didn't even know how far it went, right? So now this term comes in, Africa, let's just use that term. Whereas when we use the indigenous terms that our own people, the indigenous Black people use, they are not etymologically opaque. You can look at every one of them and they tell us very clearly who the land is for and whose the land is for, right? So we can see that in Kemet, we say first the root of that word is Kim, which translates to Black, right? Again, 4,200 years ago, you have people calling themselves Imahu Henanit Kim or Imahu Hepi Kim, which means Henanit the Black, Hepi the Black. You see in the pyramid text, it says you stand at the forefront of the Kemetiu as the Apis bull, which is a Black bull, right? We're calling ourselves Black people in the earliest attestations of any type of identity that we're even calling ourselves. We're calling ourselves Black people. Now, if you look at the Chi language, right, in Ghana, that we call ourselves Abibifo, and the root of that is Bibi, which is to be Black. There's a cognate term in the Songha language, which is Bibi. Again, it translates to Black. So we call the land Abibiman, which is land of Black people. That as long as we conceptualize it in our own languages, in classical times, all the way up to modern times, quote unquote, then we're always calling this the land of Black people. The same thing in Igbo, right? They call the land Ala Ndicioji, the land of those with black heads, right? Again, referring to the Black people there. You can look at the same thing in Yoruba language, right? They call land Ile Adulawo, the land of those who are Black in color, right? If you look at the same thing in the Bamanakan, the language of Bambara of Mali, they call the land Farafina, right? Which is the land of Black people, and they call themselves Farafin, the Black person. If you look at Wolof, they refer to themselves as Nitkunyul, right? And they refer to the land as Reo Nitkunyul, right? Land of those who are Black, right? The human who is Black. If you look at Kikongo, they refer to themselves as plural Bandombe, right? And they refer to the land as Nsia Bandombe, land of Black people. So anytime we conceptualize this land, right, the land of Black people in our own languages, then it lets us know who the land is for. But if we deal with an etymologically opaque term that's been donated to us through Latin, it becomes unclear. And this is how you can have Arabs in Morocco who are still enslaving as of 2016, over 200,000 black people, about 3 times as many as Libya. Around that time, you had all these people up in arms. Oh, they're enslaving black people in Libya. I'm like, you all aren't researchers, right? Because Libya is the low man on the totem pole, right? Egypt, modern day Egypt, which used to be part of Kemet, the land of black people, that you have 500,000 black people enslaved in modern day Egypt. You have over 500,000 in Sudan. And now let's look at the name Sudan. This is Arabic, right? You got all these Arabs throughout North Africa, but in their own language, they refer to the land as Bilad as-Sudan. Again, land of the black people. So even the non-blacks are clear that this is a land of black people. But then you would ask, well, this is Bilad as-Sudan. What is your non-black behind doing on this land of black people? You could look at Ethiops, right? This is where you get the term Ethiopia for the land. Again, the land of those of burnt faces, right? And that term, they also applied that to the entire continent at one point in time, right? You can also look at when you get the term Niger, Niger in Latin, that again, this is the root of the word Negro, meaning black, right? So not only in our languages are we clear that this is the land of black people, that even the non-black enemies of black people are clear that this is the land of black people. So this tells us that anytime you see non-blacks on this land, this tells us that this is an invader to that land. And you see this in text after text from Kemet, where you can read a text called Imahu Sanhat, Sanhat, and it talks about the walls of the ruler that are made to crush the sand-faring Bedouins. These are the non-blacks. So we actually built walls to keep these non-blacks out. And again, we call ourselves Kemetiu as black people. And we use the term Amu, which means foreigners. This means that they are foreign to the land of black people. Look at the conceptual, intellectual, and ideological clarity that they are, dealing with here. They're saying that this is a land of black people, and they are Amu because it comes from the root word Am, which is the throw stick for foreignness, right? That's the symbol of foreignness, right? This is just so profound in terms of the clarity with which we operated in classical times. You can read the same thing in the prophecy of Imahu Neferti, where it talks about how these will fall, these non-blacks, right? They're talking about the Amu will fall to the flame, that those who invaded into Kemet, the Chemhu, will fall to the sword. And it says, one will build the walls of the ruler to crush the sand-faring Bedouins, right? Who we now refer to as like all these Arab, Middle East, quote unquote types. And so they're so clear, and they say, then Ma'at will return to her seat while Isfet is driven away. This is so profound, right? So as long as we conceptualize it in our own language, then we're clear. And this is why I would advocate that we need to return to either the term Kemet or any of the cognate terms, or any of the cognate terms in any of our languages. Because as long as we name ourselves after Americus, right? That's the male, right? In Latin, and then America, that's the female, because land masses are seen as being feminine in their language, right? They have this dual gender system. You have Africanus, and then you have this Ika. So anytime you see the us, it's letting you know male. The Ika, you see that this is now female. That all of these terms are coming either through Latin or Greek or whatever, but we need to embrace whatever term tells us black people, regardless of location. But again, what our pale white Neanderthal enemies want us to do is understand it as location, regardless of whether or not we are black. This is where you get those who call themselves Americans, and that's bad, right? For us, if we plan on surviving collectively. This is where you get people who call themselves Ghanaians, and that's bad. This is where you get people who think, oh, well, I'm just a continental African, so what happens to those in America? That doesn't concern me. That's also bad. That's equally as bad as calling yourself a Black American. This is equally as stupid, right? Because, again, nobody's coming to your assistance until we realize that we are all one Black people, commit to you, regardless of location, right? So I hope that's clear out there.
No, it's clear. You covered a lot, man. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out, Dr. Kambon. So I appreciate you coming on. Anything else you'd like to share in closing, and also give everybody your contact information. I already put it in the chat room, and also put it in the description so everybody can come. Guys, abibitumi.com. Go sign up. I need to be more active. I'm actually a member, but I need to be more active. So I know. Yeah. You call me. I know. I'm guilty. No problem. I'm guilty. So I need to be more active. So
Black people are guilty because we've been manufactured to be guilty. There's nothing internal to you that makes you different from all the other Black people who want to support Mark Zuckerberg. right? There's nothing different from any of it. Like I was on Crackerbook until around 2012 when I quit it. And literally it's a weaning process because I went through public full system, right? Just like everybody else, right? So I was manufactured to want to support these cave beasts and Neanderthals just like everybody else. And I think the only way to support myself, to promote myself, is by being on these cave beast platforms. So I had to actually go through a very painful process of leaving. At that time when I quit YouTube, that was the last one, I had over 10,000 subscribers. Now, if I didn't have anything where I knew that I want to build Black power rather than speak against white power on white platforms, then I would still just be on there. But I quit that to found bb2metv.com and bb2me.tv. But all of us, right? And that's when I say when you say I'm calling you out, I'm not saying that you are different from me, myself, or anybody else who has this little white person who's been implanted into them as a result of the Mohawk conferences, right? The miseducation. We all have a little white person inside of us, and it wants to feed itself. And the food that it wants to eat is pizza, right? It wants to eat burgers, right? It wants to eat French fries, right? And as long as we keep feeding this little white person inside of us, Nana Amos Wilson has a lecture called Blueprint for Black Power. Everybody should look at that because he talks about spirit possession. And he says multiple personality disorder is very similar to spirit possession, where once this little white spirit gets implanted into us, it wants what it wants at the expense of the host body. And you see this in multiple personality disorder, where even if smoking will kill you, well, guess what? This personality wants to smoke. So whatever happens to your lungs later for you, right? This personality wants, to drink itself to death. So regardless of what happens to the host body, it wants what it wants. And that's this little white, being. My father says that we all have a little, cave beast planted inside of us, and it wants what it wants at the expense of the host body. And until we're cognizant of that, we just do its bidding, because the miseducational system, the media, the religion, all of those things are designed to put that little cave beast inside of us. And again, it wants to go and pray to an imaginary white boy on a stick, right? It wants to kneel down to and pray to a rock in a desert 5 times a day, right? It wants to eat this food that is going to destroy. It wants Cheetos, right? It wants Coke. It wants Pepsi, right? It wants what it wants. So all the things that we think that it wants to be on YouTube, right? It wants to be on Facebook. It wants everything that just happens to, support the enemies of Black people. And that's an intentional and calculated process to bring about the end result, the end product, which is you, Don Estamir, which is me, Okunini Obadele. I just happen to be one of those who's not just fighting against it by speaking against it, but I'm fighting against it by founding those institutions that can be alternatives. Just like, you have the Negro Leagues. Because we've been created, our consciousness has been shaped and manipulated, and everybody should read the book, Falsification of African Consciousness, again by Nana Amos Wilson, where it goes into this, that all of us have been manipulated to the point where as soon as we get the opportunity to go to the major leagues, guess what? We're going to drop the Negro Leagues, right? Guess what? We're going to drop the buses that Nana Claude Anderson talks about. We're going to drop all these cottage industries that grew up around them. And people will be so erudite when they speak against that. They're like, yeah, integration was so bad, but then they're on Facebook, right? Digital integrationists in the person, right? On the digital plantation, and they refuse to go to the Maroon Society, not because they're bad people, right? But because they are the intentional and calculated end result to create an anti-African, right? Mm-hmm. So again, those who have something inside of them that wants to kill that little cave beast inside, exterminate that little cave beast inside, those are the only people who I'm talking to. Like Nana Marcus Garvey said, not everybody is, there are people who are no good there and people who are going to be no good in Africa. There are lots of people who are going to hear what I'm saying, and that little cave beast inside of them is going to be like, well, that's where our people are, and man, where can you get better likes than this? And man, where can you get better followers and subscribers than this? Where can you get better Patreon clients? You right? Those people are going to be saying that because that's that little cave beast inside of them that's relaying messages to their brain. That's saying, protect me, protect me. Oh no, if you do that, that will kill. No, protect me. But then there are probably about 2 people on who are going to actually sign up for a BB2Me. Out of however many thousands of people, Black people who are listening, there are going to be no more, I think, than 2 people who are going to sign up. And those are the only 2 people who I'm speaking to. I'm not talking to any of those other people who, this is just entertainment, to pretend like they mean the best for Black people. This is entertainment. It's a way to get likes and more cash apps and whatever. This is all it is for them. But for those two people who are actually serious about building Black power, you're going to go to Abibitumi. That's ABIBITUMI, where there's no cracker book jail, right? Where there's no copyright strikes and no, community guideline strikes and whatever. Or you said something that's too Black. And it happened to me, right? So I had a video, I think I was at Class FM, and we were discussing United States politics and Donald Trump. And I uploaded the video. This is to YouTube, because I was on YouTube too. I was manufactured the same way as everybody else, right? I was on YouTube too. And a couple hours later, I was in the YouTube dashboard, and I started seeing right before my eyes the videos being deleted. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And I checked my email, and I saw that, hold on, it says, due to community guidelines, your account has been, what did they say? Just basically obliterated, right? We've canceled out your account. So I had to go to some form, so forth and so on. After a couple of hours, they said, "Oh no, guess what? Sorry, you're not in community. You're not in violation of community guidelines." Then they restored the videos, and at that time, I had well over 500 videos, 10,000 subscribers, blah 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 blah. And we had already set up a Abibitumi TV, a Abibitumi.tv, and a AbibitumiTV.com. But that really lit a fire under my behind to say, you know what? This little cave beast that gets all its ego gratification of all my subscribers and all my likes and all my comments and whatever, we got to kill that little cave beast and start building Black power once again. So Abibitumi literally in the Tree language translates to Black power, and that's what it's all about. So those two people, I'm going to see you sign up in the next couple of minutes. Those two people, I'm going to say, please, sign up to Abibitumi, and we're going to discuss on an all Black platform. If you are a Neanderthal and a cave beast, you can't even be on our platform whatsoever. And there are people who be like, oh no, where am I going to get my memes from? Right? But this is what's going on. So those two people, I'm going to see you in a few minutes, and we're going to have a deep heart-to-heart, one-to-one conversation about what it is that we're going to do to build Black power for Black people exclusively. For you, I know it's not just entertainment. For you, I know it's not just about helping you get more likes and followers and friends and whatever. For you, I know this is actually serious, and you realize that the reason why we've made so little progress is because of those who, it's just the rhetorical ethic. Those who are going to say, yes, let's build Black power, but then they're going to be on white websites. There are people who are going to say, yeah, we should have Black institutions, but then they're going to be working at white institutions. There are going to be those who say, yeah, let's repatriate, but then they're going to be in Crackerville for the rest of their lives. Those aren't the people who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you, right? Mr. Mufasa, right? Sister Ifya, right? I'm talking to just you two people out of the thousands who are actually serious about building Black power and serious about killing that little white, cave beast inside of you. And is, instead of eating French fries this evening, I know you're going to eat some brown rice, right? Straight from the continent, which is what we're about to eat. We're going to have some rice balls and some groundnut soup. We're going to have some millet. We have jollof millet. Everybody knows about jollof rice. We're doing jollof millets. It's prepared the exact same way, but it's the indigenous millet straight from the north of Ghana. This is what we were eating before we were eating all these foreign foods that we think are African food. Fufu is not African in terms of the ingredients, right? As it's done in Ghana, right? You have cassava, which is from Central America. You have plantain, which is from Southeast Asia. That you have people who don't even know what's African anymore, right? Or I should say Kameti, right? What's for us and by us, right? And people think that all these foreign foods that are made out of maize, which is again coming from Central America, South America, all these places, they think that that's African. So we're going to eat real African food. We're going to eat the real food of Kemet, I should say, the land of Black people. And what we do is we feed that little Black person inside of us who's fighting to strangle to death that little cave beast inside of us, right? We say, you get fed, but this little cave beast, you don't get fed. But it's like, but I want some more pizza. And once I get more pizza, that's going to get me to go back to Facebook again, right? But we got to starve that little cave beast to death, that little white spider inside of us, right? And once we do that, then we'll have a whole lot more for that white spider outside of us. And then we're going to stop swinging at the spider webs and swing for the spider. Because what we do, we get caught up in saying, the problem is capitalism. if we can just get, and that's Nana Khalid Abdul Muhammad's, and look at the name. That's that little cave beast inside of us that wants that, Arab name, that wants that, white Eurasian name, right? It wants what it wants, even at the expense of its own, host body. It wants what it wants at the expense of its own people. And we see it when it wants to perm its hair, right? We see it when it wants to bleach its skin. And we cry out about that one. We say, look at Michael Jackson. We all will laugh at Michael Jackson, but we are not willing to look at the Michael Jackson that exists in all of us, right? And strangle the little, cave beast inside of us to death. So this is the spider web analogy, that rather than swinging at communism or socialism or capitalism or Christianity, people say, if we can just get rid of that white Jesus, no, that's the spider web, right? This is what Nana Bobby E. Wright talked about, the cape versus the matador. So we charge after the cape, but then eventually the moment of truth comes when we turn and look at the matador, right? And once we can do that internally, and then we realize I don't need nor want to depend on this cave beast enslaver. I don't want to finance my enemy anymore. This is when we'll start making progress as a Black nation, because what we'll do is we'll starve that white nation to death, right? We'll say we're not buying any more cave beast, draws anymore. We're going to say, you know what? We're not going to eat white rice anymore. All these people who say they're doing African rituals and they got gin, right, to do their libations. This means before you can even talk to your ancestors, you got to go to, Britain to get your gin, or you got to go to the Dutch to get your schnapps, right? Or get your whiskey, or get whatever. That's not an African ritual, right? Unless we mean African in the sense of a colony of Rome, right? But definitely not commit to you.
I want palm wine.
Palm wine. Get you palm wine or get you rainwater. If you want to do libation, do it the original way. Get you some rainwater, right? That's what we call a dukurumunsiu. People don't even know what that is anymore, right? That's what we're actually talking about if we're going to build the Black nation, because in doing so, we're starving that white spider. It's going to be on its white web where it's weaving neoliberalism, it's weaving gender confusion, it's weaving all these things. But guess what? It's not going to be able to eat anymore because we're not assisting it by financing it anymore. Then we're not going to wear clothing made by cave beasts anymore, right? And what we're doing is we're striving for that Black standard, that Kemetiu standard, which is that which originates from Black people and that which benefits from Black people. And this is what me and my father came up together with in what we call the Kambon Dam. It's a paradigm, but it's a Kambon Dam. And it means that anything that comes across your path, you can analyze it on the basis of who originates it and who benefits from it, who is it detrimental to. You can always think about it in those types of terms, and then think, does it originate from Kemetiu or does it originate from Amu, these non-Blacks, right? And once you think of that, now you can start to act on that. And then you can think about, so that's your evaluative criteria. What criteria do you use to evaluate what you should do and what you should not do? And then you also have your organizing principles. So once you say it's beneficial to Amu, right, to these Neanderthal cave beasts, you can say, well, in what area? Oh, it's beneficial to them economically because they get paid off of that. Or it's beneficial to them psychologically every time they see a Black person kneel down and pray to an imaginary white boy instead. So for me, I don't pray to even real white people, much less imaginary white people. So this white boy who people be praying to every Sunday, that's a no-go, no haps, that's a non-starter. I'm not doing any of that. But, this is what it's all about. So we starve them psychologically because they have this ego need, right? And even ego, right? All of these terms that are, Freudian terms, we should refer to the ba, right? We should refer to the ka, right? We should refer to all the aspects of what makes up the human being. But we actually starve their ba to death. They can no longer live off of us because we say, instead of getting a Samsung phone, I'm going to get a Mara phone, right? This is the Mara phone right here, made in Rwanda, right? Mm-hmm. That's the phone I just got. My auntie who's there just sent it to me. And this is the KTA phone. Now, the Mara phone, I would rank it higher than the KTA phone. This is Chum Ampofo, Kwesi Chum Ampofo. So he's based in the United States, but he's at least designed the phone. So that's where I was before. I say, no, I'm not satisfied with that because I want one that's manufactured on the continent itself by Black people, right? By us, for us, to the best of our ability. So this is what we do when we're actually serious about, Kemetiu liberation. And again, I'm nowhere close to my destination. But once I realize that, this means that I have more to go to starve that white spider. I have more to go to make sure that white spider can't weave another web. That's going to be called neoliberalism, or it's going to be called, Instafool, right? It's going to be called Nitwitter. It's going to be called YouTube, right? It's going to be called Crackerbook, right? Fake book, right? I'm not going to let you weave another web to get more of our terms. And when my father calls terms, that's Dr. Kamal Kambon, Okunini Kamal Kambon, that is time. Every time we're on these cracker platforms, they get our time. This means the time I would have been on a black platform building the black nation, I'm rather spending all of my time on the white platform building the white nation. This is where we went wrong, right? Energy, right? Every time I can't be in two places at the same time. This is physics, right? Basic physics, right? So every time my energy is going to build this white platform, that means that's energy that's not going to build the black platform, right? My resources, every time I need to do a cracker book boost and give them another $100, this is what they used to build the prisons. This is what they build. This is what they used to buy the bullets that shoot us down. And then we're going to do another protest march and buy more sneakers. And then Nike stock goes up and say, thanks, black people. Yes, your lives matter. Ha, 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 ha. As they laugh all the way to the bank, right? Our materials, right? Whatever that may be, that they're able to take that. Our space, right? Our money, our resources, all of these things, that every time what we do is we continue to build that black nation to the detriment of build that white nation to the detriment of building that black nation. So again, this is where we went astray, and this is the core of where we're still going astray. People like to point fingers at those integrationists who collapsed the Negro leagues and so forth and so on, but fail to see how us, including myself, all of us are digital integrationists until we start to do something different, right? Until we start to build up that maroon community, either online, offline. We're doing both, right? At Abibi Tumi. Until we start to do something different, we should say nothing about those sellout house Negroes who are integrationists until we stop being those exact same integrationists in the modern form, sharing hashtags and think we're doing something for black people because we got a Black Lives Matter hashtag, which is funded by George Soros or whatever. So, we have to stop defrauding ourselves and defrauding each other. This is what's called the rhetorical ethic, right? Where your ethics are just based on rhetoric and saying something that sounds cool, but we don't see it in any area of your life, right? So what type of house do you have? What type of food do you eat? What type of chair are you sitting on? Is that a chair made by Kometiu, or is it a chair made by Almu, right? If it's made by Almu, guess what? They're going to flip that and use those funds to do their criminal activities within the United States and throughout the entire planet Earth, right? And we're financing it and funding it until we starve that spider to death, until we strangle them to death, right? And we have to do it internally because there's nothing that's going to happen externally as long as in the back of our minds we say, well, hold on, if we do anything to the white spider, what's going to happen to my subscribers, right? Oh no, if we do anything to this good white man, what's going to happen to my likes? And when I talk about quote unquote ego gratification, is based on the dose, right? And this is how Eurasians manipulate us chemically at the cellular level, as my father calls it. What is the dose? That's dopamine, that's oxytocin, that's serotonin, that's endorphins. Every time you get a new Patreon subscriber or whatever, then this, manipulates those chemicals and we get happy, right? This is what gaming is based on. You get happy when you get more points or whatever it is, right? When you get another subscriber and you reach that next plateau of 100,000 followers or subscribers or whatever, this triggers off a chemical reaction inside of you, and it feels good. It's like an orgasmic type of feeling that you get at whatever level you get it. And this is how they're able to manipulate us internally. That's that little white cave beast inside of us that we start to feel happy when we get, oh man, I shared this and I got 1 million views on it, right? And we're all susceptible to it because they're inside of us. They're inside of our glands, right? And they're manipulating it just as Pavlov did to dogs, just as Skinner did to rats. And again, Nana Amos Wilson goes very deep into this, where you have this gratification, right? You have a random, gratification where when the rat presses it, it'll just keep pressing it until it knows that I get fed every time I press this lever, right? And now you have a rat that's no longer operating on natural selection. It's operating on artificial selection, right? This is a very unrat-like rat, right? That's a Black American. That's a Black Brazilian. That's a Black British. That's a Black German. That's a Ghanaian. That's a Togolese. That's a Nigerian, right? That's any of these fake. That's even Asante. That's even Ga. That's even Fanti. That's even Yoruba. That's even Fon. That's all of these fragment identities, everything except for we are all Kemetu, whatever that is in your language. If it's Adulawa, that's correct in the Yoruba language. If it's Yoruba, that's incorrect, right, in the Yoruba language. If it is Indicioji in Igbo language, that's correct. If it's Igbo or Biafra, that's incorrect in the Igbo language, right? If it's, Farafin, that's correct. But if it's Amamalian, that is incorrect. If it's Ambambara, that is incorrect, because all of those are fake and fraud consciousnesses that will do nothing. And when you look at how these different seagoing creatures defeat sardines, it's the same thing that's done in warfare, where they will break off. This is what dolphins do when they want to kill sardines, that the sardines will be in this huge shoal or this huge school. And what they do is that they'll round up some of the sardines, they'll split them up. Now they're able to defeat all of those sardines one by one, as opposed to when they're in a huge group. Now they can't do anything because they can't even perceive it. Every time that the flash of the side of the sardine goes, they can't even judge the depth, perception and the approximation of it. But once they're able to get them into a ball, and it's what's called a bait ball, right? This is very analogous to the Black people situation. Again, so many lessons in nature. That there's what's called a bait ball situation, where now the sardines are every sardine for itself, right? And every single one is trying to get into the center of the bait ball, right? But then eventually a brooder as well. Look at this. Look at a video called Sardine Feeding Frenzy. We got it on a BB Tumi. You could find it on your local cracker-owned platform as well. But Sardine Feeding Frenzy. Look at when it's in the bait ball situation. This is our exact situation as Black people. Every Black person for himself, no longer thinking about the Black collective. I'm thinking about how many subscribers I got. Do I got more than Wode Maya? Do I got more than Black Sick? Do I got more than Dynasty Amir? Do I got, right? That's our situation of just every single one trying to get to the middle of that, as opposed to if we're all functioning as sardines on a huge mass, these predators can't do nothing with us, right? But again, we're not sardines, we're human beings. So we even have more options than even the sardines have available to them.
Absolutely. Well, brother, man, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you. Thank you so much. And guys, make sure you sign up at abibitumi.com. Okay. Make sure you go there and sign up. I need to get more active, and I will, starting right now. So until next time, family, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynasty Mirror, search for Huru. Peace.
There we go.